In 1897, a Swiss cutler bolted a corkscrew onto a soldier's knife and accidentally invented the most useful object in American history. Your grandfather carried one for 40 years and never once opened a bottle of wine with it. Number 7 on this list was taught at every Boy Scout camp in the country. Number 3 could still save you on a dark highway tonight. Then one Tuesday morning in 2001 changed everything, and millions of these tools vanished from American pockets overnight. Let's count down 20 tricks we forgot. Number 20, the awl is a belt punch. That little curved spike on the back of the knife confused everybody. It looked like a tiny pirate hook, and half the men carrying one never touched it. Your grandfather did. When his belt got too tight after Thanksgiving, or too loose after a summer of roofing, he didn't drive to the store for a new one. He laid the belt flat on a scrap of pine, set the awl point exactly a ½ inch past the last hole, and turned it. Not pushed. Turned. That's the whole secret. The awl is ground with a cutting edge on one side, so it shaves a clean round hole instead of tearing the leather into a ragged star that stretches out in a month. 3 seconds of twisting, flip the belt, twist from the backside to clean the burr, done. A leather punch at Sears ran about $4 in 1975 and lived in a drawer. The awl lived in his pocket. And it wasn't just belts. Watch straps, dog collars, canvas tarps, the boot tongue that never had a lace hole where you wanted one. Men repaired instead of replaced, and this was the tool that let them. Number 19, the sewing eye nobody noticed. Look at that same AWL closely and you'll find a tiny hole punched near the tip. Most people go their entire lives without seeing it. That hole is a needle eye, and it turns the awl into a saddler's stitching tool. Here's how your grandfather used it. Punch through both layers of canvas with the awl. Feed heavy thread through the eye while the point is still in the material. Pull the awl back out and you've dragged a loop of thread through with it. Pass the free end through that loop, cinch it tight, and you've made a lock stitch. The same stitch a leather shop uses on a saddle. It doesn't unravel when one thread breaks, unlike the running stitch everybody else fumbles with. He'd fix a torn pack strap on the trail, a ripped tent panel in the rain, a seam blown out on his work coat at 7 in the morning in a parking lot. 15 minutes, and it held for years. This is the single most useful feature on the knife, and it's the one feature almost nobody in America can identify anymore. We just buy a new coat. Number 18, 2 blades, 2 jobs, 1 rule. Every Swiss Army knife came with a big blade and a little blade, and there was an iron law about how you use them. The big blade did the ugly work, cutting twine, slicing open feed bags, scraping gasket material, prying a lid, whittling a stake out of a wet branch. It got dull, and that was fine because it was supposed to. The small blade was sacred. It never touched cardboard. It never got used as a screwdriver. It stayed shaving sharp, and it did the work that required an edge. Splinters, hangnails, fishing line, stitches out of a hem, peeling an apple for a kid in the passenger seat. Your grandfather could shave the hair off his forearm with that small blade any day of the week. Victorinox hardens the steel to about 56 on the Rockwell scale, which is a deliberate compromise. Soft enough that you can bring the edge back on a rock or a coffee mug. Hard enough to hold it through a workday. Modern knives chase 62 and up, and they hold an edge beautifully until they don't, and then you're helpless in the field. The old steel was designed for a man who fixed things himself. Number 17, the can opener that isn't a can opener. That hooked shark fin looking tool opened cans, obviously, and it did it in a way that terrified anyone who tried it after growing up with an electric one. You hooked the lip, pushed forward, rocked back, hooked again. It walked around a can of peaches in about 20 seconds and left a lid you could bend back like a hinge. But that's not why your grandfather loved it. He loved it because it was a pry bar that fit in a pocket. It popped paint can lids without bending them into a shape that never sealed again. It pulled staples out of fence posts and shipping crates. It lifted a stuck battery terminal. It got under a hubcap. And here's the part that matters. The steel of the can opener is thick and short, which means it takes leverage that would snap a knife blade instantly. Prying with your blade is how you turn a knife into two knives. Your grandfather knew that. He had a dedicated pry tool riding right next to the blade, and he used it every single time. That discipline is why his knife lasted 50 years and yours breaks in a season. Number 16, the flathead on the can opener tip. Now look at the very end of that can opener. There is a small flat screwdriver ground right into it, maybe 1/8 of an inch wide. That tip is one of the most used tools on the entire knife, and almost nobody realizes it's there. It fit the screws in a set of eyeglasses. It fit the terminal screws in a lamp cord. It fit the tiny screws on a carburetor's idle mixture, on a Zenith radio chassis, on a kid's toy on Christmas morning at 11 at night when every store in town was closed. Meanwhile, the big screwdriver on the opposite end of the knife, hidden under the bottle opener, was ground wide and thick for real work. Switch plates, door strike plates, the screws holding down a car battery bracket, 2 screwdrivers, 2 sizes, riding in your pocket all day and weighing nothing. In 1975, a man could disassemble half the objects in his house with what was in his front left pocket. Today, most Americans own a toolbox they cannot find and a phone that cannot turn a screw. Number 15, the bottle opener as a wrench. Everybody knows the bottle opener opens bottles. Your grandfather knew it also fit around a small hex nut. The notch on a Victorinox opener grips a number 8 or so hex head well enough to break it loose, and once it's loose, you finish with your fingers. But the real trick was the other end. That same tool has a raised lip designed to catch a crown cap. And if you flip it over and drag it across a wire, the lip works as a burnisher. He'd use it to scrape corrosion off a battery post, to clean the contact on a flashlight spring, to burnish the points on a distributor when the car ran rough. Green crust on a terminal was the #1 cause of a car that wouldn't start in 1968, and it took 11 seconds to fix with a bottle opener. Not because Victorinox designed it that way, but because a man with one tool and a problem finds the intersection. That's the entire philosophy that vanished. We don't look at objects and ask what else they could be. We search for the exact product and wait 2 days for delivery. Number 14, the wire stripper notch. Here's where things get interesting. Look at the base of the can opener, right where it meets the pivot. There is a small semicircular notch cut into the steel. That is not decoration, and it is not a manufacturing artifact. It is a wire stripper. You lay a piece of lamp cord or speaker wire in that notch, squeeze it against the frame with your thumb, and rotate the knife once. The notch is sized to bite through the insulation without nicking the copper underneath. Then you pull, the jacket slides off in one clean tube, and you have a bright stripped end ready to twist. A nicked strand is how a wire fails 18 months later inside a wall, and every electrician knows it. That notch prevented it. Here is the wild part. Victorinox has been cutting that notch since the 1950s, and if you survey 100 Americans who own a Swiss Army knife today, maybe 2 can tell you what it is for. The knowledge did not die because the tool changed. The tool never changed. The knowledge died because we stopped fixing our own lamps. Number 13, tweezers, toothpick, and the 2-second splinter. Tucked into the scales, invisible until you look, was a pair of steel tweezers on one end and a plastic toothpick on the other. The toothpick got mocked. The tweezers saved marriages. Your grandfather's routine on a splinter was surgical, and it took under a minute. Small blade, sterilized with the flame of a lighter and wiped on his jeans. Nick the skin above the splinter, not at it, opening a path along its length instead of digging down at it. Tweezers in, grab the tail, pull along the same angle it entered. Out clean, no fragment left behind, no infection 3 days later. Every dad on every campground in America did this for a crying 7-year-old on a picnic table. But the Tweezers did more. They pulled ticks, held a tiny screw into a recess where fingers wouldn't fit, retrieved a drop nut from an engine bay, and pinched a wire while solder cooled. And the toothpick, that ridiculous plastic toothpick, kept a man's teeth clean and his mouth shut at a business lunch. It cost nothing. It weighed nothing. It was always there. Number 12. The scissors nobody else had. First pattern break. Stop and consider how insane it is that a pocket knife has functioning scissors, not novelty scissors. Real ones with a leaf spring behind the pivot that snaps them open after every cut so you can work them with one hand while the other hand holds the material. Your grandfather cut his own fingernails with those scissors for 30 years and never owned a clipper. He trimmed loose threads off a suit jacket in the church parking lot. He cut fishing line, which a knife blade does terribly and scissors do perfectly. He opened blister packs, cut a photograph to fit a wallet, trimmed a child's bangs in an emergency, opened a bag of chips without the whole thing exploding. The spring is the genius. On a cheap knockoff, that spring is stamped steel and it snaps within a year, and the scissors are dead forever. On a Victorinox, it's a formed wire spring that flexes hundreds of thousands of times. That's the difference between a tool you carry for 4 decades and a gas station souvenir. Your grandfather knew the difference by feel in the store before he bought it. Number 11. The Phillips driver hiding in the corkscrew. This one is a magic trick. On a Swiss Army knife with a corkscrew, the corkscrew is a hollow spiral, and Victorinox made a tiny screwdriver bit that slots into the middle of that spiral and locks in place. It rides inside the corkscrew, completely hidden. Pull it out, and you've got an eyeglass screwdriver with a real handle behind it, because the whole knife becomes the handle and the corkscrew becomes the shaft. Your grandfather fixed the arm of his reading glasses in a diner booth with it. He tightened the screws in a watch band. He got into a hearing aid, a camera, a sewing machine bobbin housing. And on the bigger models, that same spiral did another job entirely. Hook it through a knot in wet rope or a shoelace pulled to concrete hardness, and the spiral acts as a marlin's pike, prying the knot's throat open without cutting the lace. Sailors have used a spike for this for 400 years. Your grandfather used a corkscrew in a parking lot on his kid's sneaker and had it undone in 15 seconds while the kid stopped crying. Number 10. The wood saw that actually cuts wood. People laugh at the little saw, then they use it. The teeth on a Victorinox wood saw are set alternately left and right, which cuts a curve slightly wider than the blade so it does not bind, and they are raker set, meaning some teeth cut and some teeth clear the sawdust out. That is real saw geometry in a 3-inch blade. It will go through a 2-inch green branch in about 40 seconds. Your grandfather cut tent stakes with it. He cut a fallen sapling out of a driveway. He notched a pole for a clothesline. He cut a broom handle down to fit a closet. And there is a trick nobody teaches anymore. Do not push hard. That saw cuts on the pull stroke primarily, and it cuts on the last third of the blade. So you use long, slow strokes and let the teeth work. Bear down and you will bind it. Snap a tooth and blame the knife. The saw is also, quietly, the best tool on the knife for cutting frozen food, rope under tension, and PVC pipe. It does not care. It just keeps going. Number 9, the magnifying glass and the map. Second pattern break, and this one's about a tool that seems useless until the day it isn't. Some models, the Explorer, the Master Craftsman, carried a small magnifying lens. Your grandfather used it to read a road map at a rest stop, because paper maps had 8-point type and there was no other way to find a county road at dusk. He used it to read the fine print on a contract, a medicine bottle, a fuse rating. He used it to find a splinter he couldn't see. And on a sunny day, he used it to start a fire, holding the lens 6 inches off a nest of dry grass and moving it until the bright dot shrank to a pinprick and started to smoke. That took maybe 30 seconds in July. The lens is also the reason the old-timers could inspect a knife edge properly. Hold a blade under magnification in the sun, and you can see the wire edge, the rolled spots, the chips. You can't sharpen what you can't see. Every serious knife man in 1970 knew this. Now we buy sharpeners with lasers on them and still can't get an edge. Number 8, the spine as a striker. Look at the back of the main blade. On the old knives, it is ground square with a crisp 90-degree corner, and that corner is not an accident. A square spine is a scraper. Drag it down a ferrocerium rod and it throws a shower of sparks at 5,000 degrees. Drag it down a fat wood stick and it curls off resin-soaked shavings that lighten wet weather. Drag it across a piece of birch bark and it lifts the papery outer layer which lights like a match. Your grandfather never used the cutting edge for any of this because using the edge as a scraper is how you destroy an edge. He turned the knife around. That was the rule. Edges cut, spine scrape. Modern production knives round and polish that spine because it feels nicer in the hand and it looks more expensive. And in doing so, they killed the feature. Buy a beautiful new folder today and try to strike a ferro rod with it, and nothing happens. Your grandfather's beat-up 1974 camper does it on the first pass. Comfort replaced capability and nobody noticed. Number 7, sharpening on the bottom of a coffee mug. Here's the trick that separated the men who owned a knife from the men who carried one. Flip a ceramic coffee mug upside down. That raw, unglazed ring around the base is fired ceramic, roughly the grit of a fine sharpening stone, and it is free, and it is in every kitchen, diner, and church basement in America. Your grandfather would hold the blade at a shallow angle, about the thickness of 2/4 under the spine, and drag it away from himself along that ring, 12 strokes aside, alternating lighter and lighter. Then he'd strop it on his belt, on the leather, on the flesh side, dragging spine first to lay the wire edge over and knock it off. 2 minutes and the knife would shave. A car window edge works too, and so does the unglazed rim of a toilet tank lid, which is why every deer camp joke about that exists. Boy Scouts taught this to millions of American kids. And when the knives left our pockets, this went with them, and now sharpening feels like a specialist hobby with $200 equipment. It was a coffee mug. It's still a coffee mug. Number 6, the hot water rinse. Controversy incoming because knife forums will tell you this is wrong. Your grandfather washed his Swiss Army knife in scalding hot water, not soap and a scrub brush, boiling water from a kettle, poured over the open knife while he worked all the tools back and forth. The heat blasted out the food, the pocket lint, the sawdust, and the grit that grinds a pivot into slop. Then, and this is the part everybody skips, he shook it hard, worked every blade open and closed until the residual heat evaporated the water out of the joints and put 1 single drop of oil at each pivot, not 3 drops. 1. Excess oil collects dust and turns into grinding paste. Victorinox themselves say the knives are dishwasher safe on the metal, though the dishwasher will wreck the shine on the scales. Here's the wild part. A knife maintained this way runs perfectly at 80 years old. Try it on a knife you've carried for a decade. The improvement in the action will genuinely surprise you. Most old knives that feel gritty aren't worn out. They're just filthy inside. Number 5, the feather stick. 3rd pattern break, and this is the one that separates camping from surviving. It rains, everything outside is wet, and there is no dry tinder anywhere. Your grandfather picked up a dead branch the thickness of his wrist, split it down with the blade, and found the inside bone dry. Then he took a finger-thick stick and ran the blade down it at a shallow angle, over and over, stopping just before the end of each stroke so the shaving stayed attached. 30 or 40 curls, tight and thin as paper, all fanning off the same stick. That's a feather stick. And it will catch a spark and burn hot enough to dry the wood above it and start the whole fire. It works when nothing else works. Every scout in America learned this before 1998. The technique requires a specific blade grind. Incidentally, the flat grind on a Swiss Army knife slices into wood and releases, where a thick, hollow ground hunting knife wants to bite and stall. The cheap little knife outperforms the expensive one at the single task that might actually matter, and that is not an accident, it is design. Number 4, the blade as a feeler gauge. This one's almost lost. In 1970, a tune-up meant setting the points and gapping the plugs, and a man could do both in a driveway in 40 minutes. Your grandfather knew the exact thickness of the small blade on his knife because he'd measured it once with a real feeler gauge and never forgot, right around 25 thousandths of an inch, which is conveniently near the spec for a lot of American ignition points and in the neighborhood of a spark plug gap. He'd slide it in, feel the drag, and know. He also used the blade to scrape carbon off a plug electrode, to clean a distributor cap contact, and to pry a stuck plug wire boot without tearing it. Was it precise? No. Did it start the car at the side of Route 30 at 10 at night with no shop within 40 miles? Every time. That's the trade the whole country made without voting on it. We gave up rough capability everywhere for perfect precision somewhere else, and now nobody can fix anything at the side of a road. Number 3, the parachute cord and the reamer. This is the one that could still save you tonight. Your grandfather kept a few feet of cord wrapped around the knife or in the same pocket, and the reamer turned that cord into a repair system for a broken world. Hose blows on a radiator, cut the split section out, punch the hose back onto the fitting, and clamp it with cord using a trucker's hitch, and the AWL becomes the tool that tightens the loop. Broken belt? A pair of pantyhose and a cord lashing got people home for 50 years. Shattered window in a storm? All punches holes around a trash bag, cord laces it in. Boot sole flapping off? All punches through the sole and the upper, cord stitches it, and you walk out. The knife wasn't the solution. The knife made solutions. That distinction is everything, and it's what died. We now own a specific product for every specific failure and own nothing at all for the failure we didn't predict. Your grandfather predicted nothing and could fix almost anything. Number 2, the one-hand pull and the fingernail nick. 4th pattern break, and this one is pure craft. Every blade on the knife has a small crescent nick ground into it, and getting a blade out with cold, wet, or gloved hands is genuinely hard. So men develop technique. Hold the knife with the nick facing up. Push the base of your thumbnail into the crescent and roll your wrist away from the blade, letting the weight of the knife do the opening instead of the strength of your nail. It comes out on the first try every time, in the dark, in the rain. If your nails were shot from work, you'd hook the nick on your belt buckle, on a coin, on the edge of a table. There was a right way, and everybody knew it. And the closing was ritual too. Never let the back spring slam. Ease it down with the flat of your finger against the spine, because that back spring is a leaf of hardened steel doing millions of cycles, and men who slammed their knives shut wore out the tang in 20 years, while men who didn't handed theirs to a grandson. The care was the point. Number 1, carrying it. Here's the trick that made all 19 others possible, and the one we truly lost. He had it on him, every day. Bathrobe to work pants to funeral suit, the knife moved pockets with the wallet and the keys, and it was never a decision. That's why he could open the box, fix the glasses, pull the splinter, cut the twine, and start the fire, because the tool was already there before the problem showed up. Victorinox has made these since 1897, and American GIS brought them home from Europe after the war, and could not pronounce Schweizer Offiziersmesser. So they called it the Swiss Army knife, and the name stuck, and it became for 50 years the most common object in an American man's pocket. Then September 11th, 2001. The tools came out of the pockets to get through the airport, and most of them never went back in. Victorinox lost a staggering share of its business in a matter of months and had to reinvent the company to survive. And then a phone filled the pocket instead. It does 1,000 things. It cannot cut a single one of them. Try one this week. Just one. Strike a ferro rod with the spine. Sharpen on a mug. Punch a belt hole. Then tell me in the comments whether your grandfather was being sentimental or whether he knew something we traded away for a screen, because I have a feeling I already know the answer. He knew. Now you know too.